onefootflipper.
Hi, Paige here, the 1 Foot Flipper. It's Saturday morning. We're not going to do any sales today because my sales are kind of at an all-time low, but that's because my listing's been at an all-time low. I've been spending more time cleaning up my basement, consolidating boxes, and digging through death pile to throw things away that I'm not going to list than I have listing. However, I've made quite a lot of space now, so I'm going to see if I can get back to my regular listing and manage to do $10,000 to $15,000 in listings this month, hopefully without buying anything. Now, I will still accept anything that walks in my front door. I don't want my regular sources to find someone else, but I'm not really anticipating anything from them. I've already put in $160 worth of listings this morning, and I took pictures and photographs of 10 more records that I haven't listed yet, so hopefully by the end of the day I can get to hopefully $500 for the listings for the day. But what we're going to talk about is what you hear a lot of other resellers talking about recently, which is cross-posting. Now, I'm not going to go over any of the good things about cross-posting because you're already seeing those videos everywhere from YouTube Bob and YouTube Betty. They're telling you how great List Perfectly is and Vendoo is, and how they're sponsored by them, and how you notice most of the time they're only in the free trial themselves. Just think about that part. Let that part sink in. All right, which brings me to my first point. Cross-posting with these services is not free. There's a free trial, and that's what YouTube Bob and YouTube Betty, who are sponsored by these services, are usually still using. But let's look at Vendoo. A full-time seller is going to need the $50 or $100 a month level of Vendoo to function, depending. I believe you get $600 on the $50 level, and you need the $100 level to go over $600. Yeah, $600 on the $50 level. That'll cover some full-time sellers, but I think a lot of full-time sellers list more than 600 items a month, which means they're going to need the $1,000 plan. Or if you're really, the $100 plan, although if you really go nuts, if you're one of those types who list 100 items a day, you're going to need the expert plan at $150 a month. So that's not free. That's money directly out of your pocket, gone. That $100 plan, $1,200 a year, gone. List Perfectly, a little bit cheaper. They have a $30 version, but it's essentially useless. It's lacking every possible feature you'd ever need. It doesn't support SKUs. It doesn't support the weights of the items. Nothing. It supports so little that I couldn't see why. It doesn't support quantity, size, color, barcode, nothing. That's worthless. Throw it away. There's a $50 version. That's almost functional. But it's missing the most important thing, is that it doesn't have sales detection. So it's not going to automatically take those items down or let you know immediately when they've sold, so you don't have double sales. Only the $69 version of List Perfectly is fully featured. So basically that's the starting point. You need the Pro version. The rest of it isn't useful, and that's a hefty amount of money too. And would you actually do better just not having that service altogether? I don't know. You tell me if you're using it. Number two, I know sales don't increase all that much because you watch YouTube Bob, YouTube Betty, and you see they rarely have more than 1 or 2 cross-listing sales per episode. Usually they don't film every day. That's a tiny blip in their sales percentages. That same time, effort, and money could have been used to list more items on eBay instead. That $70 that you're going to spend on that full-featured List Perfectly. What if instead you spent that $70 and buying a couple of great items and listing them on eBay? Where do you think you'd end up better? Averaging 2% better sales, or $70 plowed into better items in the first place? Your third thing is you're splitting your expertise. You're wasting time mastering these tiny platforms. You're worrying about these platforms that barely have 10% of the marketplace between them, because that's the reality of the situation. Sure, you hear people say eBay is dying, the other ones are taking over. Yes, eBay's lost a little bit of the marketplace, a little bit of the share. It still has 90% of it all to itself. The rest of them are fighting over those scraps of that 10%. And honestly, keeping up with the eBay changes is hard enough. And now you have to deal with a bunch of other platforms as well. And if you just blindly cross-list, then you're that same clueless seller making mistakes on those other platforms instead of being the pro that you already are on eBay. And is that worth it to get a 2 or 3% bump in sales, paying this money, making these mistakes? And maybe it is. I don't know. Fourth reason to not cross-list is every other platform out there is definitely actively worse for people who are everything sellers. You know, most of them you can't even sell everything, or they're not equipped to properly deal with everything the way only eBay does. And even platforms that specialize in certain items, oftentimes they are actively worse in the items they specialize on than just using eBay. Like, I sell a lot of cards, and I know for sure TCG Player and Beckett Marketplace are worse to sell cards on than eBay, because since they specialize in those items, they identify every single one, every single card in existence, or at least for the ones they support. So when a customer goes to buy this lucky Beanie Baby card, say on Beckett, because TCG Player wouldn't have this, they are going to see this exact card and every seller that has it available sorted by price. So you absolutely have to be lowest by condition to get those sales. There's no other way. You have to be lowest. It races to the bottom to where this card is probably listed for 1 cent. And I'm sure it can be that way for the marketplaces that specialize in other things. Your fifth reason, you're now spending time checking multiple platforms constantly, or having to change what you do. Like, I prefer to do nothing via email at all. I prefer to do everything in the eBay interface. That way I don't have to keep looking at my email. There's no chances I'm going to fall for any weird scam thing. So now I'd be checking all of these platforms all of the time, instead of just eBay and just having any notification I need coming through with my normal workflow. Now I'm having to worry about notifications elsewhere. Your sixth things, your items can still double sell, even with automatic removal, which most of these services don't have or aren't perfect at. Like, one thing I know in collectibles, sometimes investors will do what's called a buyout, and they'll buy every copy of something on the internet in a matter of minutes. And if you've got one of those on multiple platforms, you've got one of the, say you've got the same thing on 5 platforms, and somebody's doing a buyout of that rare item. They're going to buy it on all 5 platforms at once, and it probably won't get taken down off of all of them before it's too late. Then you're going to have to cancel orders over multiple platforms, get dinged on all of those platforms for canceling the orders. Or, you know, even if you don't have that sort of situation, you've heard YouTube and Bob and Betty tell the story that these things have indeed double sold on them. Even with the places that are tightly integrated like Bonanza that are supposed to automatically take it down, it doesn't always happen. Seventh reason why cross-posting might not be for you is most of the time your ASP for like items is lower on other platforms, and some of the other platforms have higher fees. I know when I'm looking for something, I only look at the other platforms if I want a specific item and eBay doesn't seem to have one at a reasonable price. I only shop those other platforms if I can get a lower price than I can on eBay. And think about it. You ever see anyone who specializes in one of the other platforms and doesn't do eBay? If they do, it's usually because one of two things. Either, like Daily Refinement, they were kicked off eBay, they're not allowed to use it. he had to, redo his entire business, add a bunch of employees, get more space in order to go 100% whatnot to essentially make the same profit he used to with one employee. And still constantly talks about how he wants to get eBay back and he's going to get eBay back. Or you do get some people who get so big that it makes more sense on social media, that they're able to outsell eBay on whatnot because of their viewer purchases just being at higher prices than they get on eBay. But otherwise, you really don't see anybody who's like, I sell on nothing but Mercari, and it's the best thing in the world, and I'm doing $150,000 a year. You don't see that YouTube channel anywhere, do you? So why do you care about having your items on Mercari? Number 8, cross-listing can totally wreck a lot of the things you might do in managing a large eBay store, such as bulk markdowns, end and sell similar. Now, List Perfectly does seem to have some support at the highest level for some of that stuff, but it still might not work perfectly. And I know I can mess with 100 listings or more in one day. And now I've got to deal with all of that in the Crosslister as well. Hope it works. Hope it filters out to all the other websites correctly. Hope my end and sell similar items also end and sell similar on the other websites. All of that. And that's a complication that I just wouldn't be willing to deal with. Now, cross-listing might still be for you. It could be. I'm not going to say that it's not going to be for you, and I'm not meaning to insult YouTube, Bob, or Betty. You know what? Chances are, if Vendu, before I made this video, if Vendu wanted to pay me to promote them, I probably would have. I would have taken the money, done the ads, talked about how well it was working for me at the time, and then once the ads were over, I would probably drop the service and not talk about it anymore. All right, I think that's all I got for you today. We'll come back with a sales video tomorrow. Bye.